My name is Austin Broom. I'm a Mexican American interviewing my grandmother about Mexican segregation and discrimination in America. I interviewed her to learn about her and my grandfather's experience of discrimination in Texas against Mexicans. This is a picture of my grandparents, Dr. Raul Soto and Macrina Soto. Discrimination and segregation of Mexican Americans in the United States is not as well known as that against African Americans. As the United States was settled, the movement of the European settlers from east to west meant that the colonists encountered Native Americans, the African Americans used as slaves, and Mexicans. Because Mexican Americans are made up of a diverse blend of people, it is not as easy to categorize them within a certain race, so it is interesting to learn how they have been historically treated. Today, people of Latino descent in the United States are the fastest growing ethnic population in America and embody significant minority populations in many states. Categorization of Mexicans within a racial group is difficult, which may be why their inclusion or exclusion in society was not always clear. Mexican people cannot always be identified by their skin color or features, but general practice in the United States through the mid-1900s was to categorize people as white or non-white. That meant that Mexican people were non-white and subject to the same discriminatory practices as African Americans. This is a picture of my grandfather as a young man driving an early car full of friends. Here is my grandfather with a big fish caught off the coast of Baja California, Mexico. This is my grandfather shortly after graduating from medical school in 1939. Here is a picture of my grandfather shortly before he retired and had his picture taken for the American Medical Association. My grandparents met when my grandmother was in nursing school. This is a picture of my great-grandmother, my grandmother, and my great-great-grandmother the day my grandma graduated. And now the interview with my grandma, Macrina Soto. What was my grandfather like?
Your grandfather was a very, very, very intelligent person. At one time, a former schoolmate of his who became the president of the American Medical Association described him as the most intelligent man he had ever met. He was very charismatic. He was always listening. He was very, very charming. And he had a very, very good, very strong sense of humor. He was a very snappy dresser. He loved to play golf, and he was one of the best surgeons of the area.
Why did he become a doctor?
He became very interested on how bodies worked since he was a little kid, and he just loved anatomy. He loved surgery. He loved to fix people. He liked to heal people. He really loved people.
Was he discriminated against in medical school?
Yes, I think he was. At one point, one of his classmates came and asked him, "How come you're not very humble for being a Mexican?" And your grandpa says, "Why should I be humble? I'm a much better student than you are, and I'll always be a much better doctor than you ever dreamed to be."
Was the hospital segregated?
The hospital back then had uh, separate units for black people and white people. So all the residents and interns had to do their rotation through the black areas and the white areas. So they would have like birthing rooms for black people and birthing rooms for white people. So yes, definitely there was a lot of segregation. Houston, Texas was not the ideal place for a Mexican or a black person to live way back then.
Was there segregation against Mexicans?
Your grandpa used to tell me that in driving from El Paso to Houston, going to and from school, he would see signs in restaurants that said, no dogs allowed, no dogs or Mexicans. So definitely, I guess the Mexicans were in the same category with the dogs.
I was born in El Paso, Texas, where this sign was displayed 66 years earlier. I wonder what they would have considered me to be if I had been classified as black or white.